How are you?
I'm fine,
My
thank you.
name is Wanjira from Icon Radio. Probably you can give us a brief breakdown of the summit and what are the sort of expectations to happen by the end of the day.
So thank you so much for your question. First, I want to say that this is going to be a 2-day conference comprising of 2 separate themes over the days. So day 1 is more theoretical, where we're having conversations that are meant to provoke and engage. And then day 2 is more practical in the sense that there will be a workshop by the IFC tomorrow and a sustainability in action tour. But aside from that, what is important about this conference is the objectives are, number 1, we hope to utilize these discussions to form the basis of the country position for Kenya when it comes to sustainability in the built environment. And the partners you see before you and in the room will be the partners that we're hoping to work with in helping support the government shape that conversation. And the second thing, which is critical, is as we submit this report to form the country position, what would be the next action steps? I mean, we are privileged to have the Kingdom of Belgium, who's a leader in sustainability. So what can we learn and leverage from that relationship as the government of Kenya? Separately, we have leaders like Exo City Dubai, the COP28 hosts, who are here to partner with us. What can we learn and gain from that partnership? We also have the CEO of the American Chinese Society present. The Chinese are heavily invested in Africa. What can we gain from that connection? And lastly, we also have Daikin India in the conference. So we're really trying to see how we can build capacity, build relationships, not just nationally, but in a cross-cutting way. With the aim, of course, of not supporting the technical capacity, but the investment opportunity for Kenya. So yes, thank you. Are we done?
No. Hey, morning everyone.
Morning.
Jimmy Bogo from Citizen TV. And I have a couple of questions just that we want you to help us with. In terms of commitment, let's say from the IFC, could you tell us how much has been allocated towards green buildings and either this year or cumulatively over the years? And also just looking at it, what is the financing gap that is currently there in terms of greening buildings in the country? And for director, we know that government is a big player in the building and construction space, particularly with the affordable housing projects. And we just want to know what percentage of that are going to be green, and also just looking at are there plans in government to sort of green some of the government offices?
So in terms of, I'll start by just answering your last question from a KGBS capacity.
Yeah.
So we're actually working, we recently signed an MOU with Mombasa County Government, where one of the projects is certifying a portfolio of several public buildings and certifying them as green. We're hoping that becomes the showcase piece for Mombasa County at COP29. And so we are starting the ambition with public buildings. It's not yet a defined target, but we wanted to start. And then the second thing, in terms of the commitment from a national perspective, we are currently working on scoping out the opportunity between government and other partners, including the IFC, on what that looks like from an affordable housing perspective and turning it green. And so one of the things we did recently is, of course, the National Building Code, which has been updated, but we're currently also reviewing it to input the green components. We have the Affordable Housing Development Framework that, in essence, measures certain sustainability components in affordable housing. I think the challenge has been, it's been largely theoretic, but now we want to influence that into more practical approaches. But the Global South markets are reactive markets. There needs to be either an opportunity or a punishment. So from a KGBS perspective, we're trying to do both. We're trying to see how we can bring together now the players so that we can have that figure, similarly so that then we can influence the requirements to be mandatory. I'll stop there. Over to you, Engineer.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity and the question. My name is Engineer Musa Kech. I'm the Executive Director, National Construction Authority. I'm here also to represent the Ministry on matters construction and the conference as it were. So the question on what portion of affordable housing is on green construction space. I want to confirm that the government, I think, has embraced green construction by looking at even the updating of the standards and regulations that guide the construction sector. The one mentioned by CEO Nasra, which is the National Building Code, is already embracing the green construction aspects in it. I also want to indicate some of the affordable housing projects are already on the green construction space. In fact, they have been rated. One of the projects being rolled out in Homa Bay County, which is currently nearing completion. Maybe it's a good point to start that as a commitment that government is focusing on green construction. That particular affordable housing project is on green, and actually it's being implemented through one of the government agencies, National Housing Corporation, under the State Department of Housing and Urban Development in the Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development, among others. And as we move forward in terms of the rollout, there will be a progressive embracing of the green construction concept. One of the key things on green construction is the water conservation, energy efficiency, and as well as what we can call zero carbon emission materials. Those are the key focus areas, and as long as we're able to focus on that, then we are now toward the journey of green construction concepts. And as National Construction Authority, one of our mandates also is to register projects, all construction projects, whether they're in building sector, road sector, other project. And one of the things we are doing also is to record or have visibility of what projects are green as we take construction in the country in Kenya.
Okay, and maybe still on the national building codes, what's the compliance level so far?
Well, good question. Remember, we have a building code which is 1968, the old one, which is what we are replacing with the code that was recently launched. So the national building code that was recently launched, that has onboarded every new emerging construction technologies and green concept, is launched but at transition period. So it was published in March 2024, launched in July, having been approved by both houses of parliament, but it will become effective from 1st March 2025. So come 1st March 2025, we'll now start beginning to assess compliance as we implement it fully. Right now, we are still soft as we embrace the old code, as we begin to usher in the new code. So it's a stage where we cannot really be very hard on construction sites on the new code, because there's that transition window that we are currently in at the moment.
All right, so just a follow-up on the same. You talked about Homa Bay County. Maybe you can just give us the number of units that are in that project, and also looking at the total number that the National Construction Authority approves, what percentage of that is made up of green buildings? And also maybe, Mr. Ambassador, you could also come in here and just want to know, is there any commitment maybe from Belgium looking at this space, and by commitment I mean financial commitment, that maybe the Kingdom of Belgium is looking to support Kenya with?
Yeah, very good. I think the question is statistical, in the sense that how many units we are currently rolling out in Homa Bay County. I think that one I would request that actually the information is available at National Housing Corporation, the institution that is currently spearheading the implementation of that particular project. Of course, it's also domiciled at the State Department of Housing, which also accommodates all. But at NCA, I want to confirm that we register projects, including that particular one. What we need is to, we have actually that information in our, in our database, and it can be made available on short notice. Yeah, thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for the question. We haven't had a development program with Kenya for the last 20 years. Our development financing is limited, like everybody's, and we picked a number of countries with whom to collaborate, and Kenya was not one of them. So this is just a one-off project that we did here. What we are looking at is to collaborate with Kenya in substance. in the COPs and in the other international multilateral environmental fora to see if we can work together with Kenya in substance and in negotiating these the agreements that we have in those fora.
And I think just to set context, it's important to realize, thank you. I think to set context, it's important to realize that we're not at a saturation point yet. We're working towards that. 2023 was all about making sure that the climate conversation is now thinking about the construction or the built environment as a player in the climate conversation. So that was the heavy lifting done in 2023 to ensure the urban agenda is part of that conversation. Now, this is where we are, kicking off. What does that look like? Who is involved? And the money that will be required. So that's what we're piecing together, starting with this conference. But to answer your question on IFC's investment, it's about $2 billion since 2016. But a lot of that hasn't been realized in Kenya because Kenya is a voluntary market and not a mandatory market. So it's us to convince the players. So for us, we're saying we need the support from government to showcase that there's an opportunity here. So can you give us the framework that makes it mandatory? Because that's how then you can push for green financing. Thank you.
So Nasra, just before I let you go, you're saying Kenya is a voluntary market, and I just wanted to know, is this one of the major hindrances to green buildings? And if not, what are some of the other hindrances to the uptake of green buildings in Kenya?
Yes, it's definitely a huge factor, because if it's a reactive market, then if something is not compulsory, then you have a choice. But the movement is then incentive. So until we're clear on the incentives we're giving, if there's no requirement, there needs to be an incentive. So we need to have very clearly defined incentives if our market is not mandatory to get things moving forward. And that means then we need to understand how banks will be willing to now probably give preferential loans for green projects. Similarly, is there some sort of waiver in the turnaround time when it comes to approvals? There needs to be benefits if there's no mandatory requirements for us to push the market forward. And that's what we're trying to figure out, and we're hoping from this conference we'll have a few answers to that. Thank you.
Just one last question. You spoke about Kenya not being in the consideration. What are the criteria that you're looking at for you to decide to proceed or?
This is something that happened 20 years ago. Regularly we look at the countries with whom we have a development relationship with programs, et cetera, and about 20 years ago we decided to reduce the number from, I think it was at the time it was 24 to 18, and one of the countries that fell off the list, I mean that doesn't sound right, but one of the countries that we looked at that time to discontinue our relationship with was Kenya, which is actually a good thing, because it means that Kenya is no longer, our development cooperation is usually geared towards least developed countries or even least developed countries. The fact that Kenya is now no longer, is now actually a middle-income country, low middle income, but middle-income country is actually a good thing. So this is something I think you should strive for, to have as your development partners consider Kenya to be ready for a different kind of relationship, and not one of a, not like a development partner, but much more of a business partner, an economic partner, and a quote unquote more mature relationship.
Okay, I think we are done. Thank you. I guess a chance to have a tea break.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.